In this video, I'd like to share some thoughts about the kinds of people we want to have running our country. Hello, I'm Chan Abraham, and this channel is here to provide encouragement, inspiration, and to help us to find a way forward during these dark and troubled times. I had a conversation with a man at the gym, and he was interested to learn, and then he remembered that I had stood as the independent MP during the last general election in Huntingdon. I had stood because I believe there is a need for independent voices in our nation. Our two-party system of politics is badly broken. I'm not sure that it ever did actually work, but it certainly hasn't for at least the last 27 years. So whether it's been under Blair, Brown, Cameron, May, Johnson, Truss, Sunak, or the latest incumbent, Starmer, the situation is that there has not been a government that any of us can really say properly represented us, or politicians who did so. I made it clear in standing as an independent that I was standing for the people of my community, Huntingdon, and to be a representative of the values that we all hold dear, our traditional British values, which are broadly Christian in nature and are built upon the foundation of the Bible. I made it clear that I would not be bribed or bullied or blackmailed or bought. And I believe that this is at the heart of the problems that we have in government. I have run businesses, I've been in public service, I've worked closely with members of parliament of different stripes, people in the House of Lords, civil servants as well, over a number of years. And I have encouraged, especially new MPs, but all of those I have met, some of them went on to high office, to not to sell their soul. But what did they do? I cannot think of a single member of parliament that I have known over the years that has been true to their oath and their commitment to represent local people. Now, many, I believe, have done their best, but in so many cases, the question has to be asked, why do people want to become members of parliament? Now, we know that the way the system works is that a relatively small number of activists in local committees are responsible for selecting, depending on the rules of the party, who becomes the person to stand as the Member of Parliament. What this means is that the vast majority of people do not get involved in any kind of party politics. Now, we understand why, because a lot of it is committee work, it's boring, perhaps they're just not interested, they feel they've got better things to do with their lives. But it does mean that a small number of activists are responsible for selecting the people who then get to pass legislation. And the people themselves who stand are, as we have found with the present incumbents, the Labour government, the entire front bench, it would seem, all have problems in their past. And as we have seen, there are problems about lies, about subterfuge, about deception. They don't seem to want to come square and true with the British people. And you may say, well, that's always been the case. Parliaments and governments, politicians have always spun the information. Alistair Campbell notoriously coined the phrase, a good day to bury bad news. And that probably tells us all we need to know about the way in which British politicians operate. How can we best present ourselves, our message? But that's not the way leaders should be operating. We need people who genuinely want to serve, who aren't in it for themselves, who aren't wanting to carve out reputation, who aren't interested in fame or power. So my mantra, I would not be bribed or bullied or blackmailed or bought. You have to ask, how does that operate in the lives of the people who are currently in government and more broadly in Parliament? Now, potentially, we may be waiting a number of years for the next general election. And we have to find a way of bringing in a more balanced approach to the way in which politics is done and the government of our nation. Broadly speaking, we need a more centre-right. We need people who will represent traditional British values, not be pressing for things that are absolutely nothing to do with us. Cultural Marxism, DI, that's diversity, equity and inclusion, and Islamophobia law, for goodness sake. What has that got to do with Britain, which is a Christian country? Of course, people of any faith or religion are welcome here, but not to try and transform us to the places that they have left. And if we're going to have a law which is effectively a blasphemy law for Islam, what about Christianity, when there was a blasphemy law for hundreds of years that was repealed? So what is this all about? So there are big questions to be asked, as well as this terrible, dreadful drive towards net zero, which is really about making people poorer, colder, and losing their livelihoods. And we'll talk about that in a future video. So this really is all about what kind of people do we want to serve us in Parliament and in government. It's up to us to change the way in which politics is done. And what that means is more of us need to be involved. Now, there are tremendous opportunities, and one of the best is to be involved in these large gatherings that are taking place under the aegis of Uniting the Kingdom. And the next one is on the 1st of February in central London. Let's make our voices heard. Let's stand for true British values. Let us make it clear to government, the judiciary, to the police, to the civil service, the media, the BBC, which is funded by the taxpayer, that we want them to remember that they are the servants, they are not the bosses. The way forward is to change the way we do politics, parliament, government, and public life. If we change our culture by bringing in that influence which we all believe in, our traditional British values, then I am certain that together we can make progress, real progress, along the road to renewal.